Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, James Groves, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, David Wyatt-Hupton and Matthew Merrett. Guys, we saw a primetime game where the Jets lost, and what's new, right?
Yeah, primetime doesn't suit the Jets, does it? We can't blame those green pants for this one. It was all black, so
It's much worse, really.
it wasn't much better. But yeah, we'll get into it. There's some positives.
Yeah.
I don't feel as down about this game as I did against New England. So
No.
we've got some stuff to talk about on the positive side, as well as the travesty that is the Jets' run defense at the minute.
It's just it's a really bad situation. Matt, how are you feeling generally after seeing that?
I feel like I might have got off lightly because of the old 9 to 5. So far, I've only really been able to catch the 15-minute highlights on YouTube, and it was pretty grim viewing. And my thoughts go out to the people who stayed up last night watching it late and suffered and battled onwards. It was pretty tough watching, and it is kind of the same old story, unfortunately, with the Jets not being able to get themselves up for an away game, not being able to get off the field in crucial moments on defense, and the same struggles which are kind of holding this team back is something that they need to work out how to shake in the second half of the season, so that we can get a bit of optimism back for looking ahead to next year.
Yeah. I think the consistency is always going to be a thing. It's something we've mentioned where, a lot. If you go to the last 3 games, look at the variance of what's happened. It is just going to be, as Salah said after the New England game, or even after the Bengals game. I don't know which one is. Everything he almost says the same thing each week. He almost says it's either going to be good or bad. But he says some weeks we're going to look really good and we're going to be like a playoff team. Other week we're going to look like we don't belong at all on the NFL field. So. It's going to be that inconsistent, way. But at least today, in this game we scored. We actually put some points. We looked that we are going forward in one direction, at least on one side of the ball. So there's more positives to take out than say that New England game, which was just all negative. So no, absolutely. David, we both basically came up with the analogy of a hot knife through butter. Where I said the Indianapolis hot knives defeated the New York butters. It basically was the right analogy, really. What's your take on why the run D is so bad? We've got quite, on paper, decent talent to tackle that problem.
I think there's 2 elements to it. I think first of all, you absolutely have to give credit to the Colts offensive line. They are being paid to do a job as well, and it just so happened that they did the job a lot better than we did. So their offensive line is one of the best in the game at getting to that second level, and I think that's what killed us yesterday, is the ease that those offensive tackles and guards and centre were able to get to the second level and seal off our linebackers, because it was consistently something that we saw all through the game. It wasn't just a couple of players; it was all through the game. And I think Rich Samini tweeted out that their average yardage was 7 yards before they hit contact, which is it's awful. Like that, how many times was Jonathan Taylor getting to the second and even third level and he hadn't even been touched? And I was just looking at the box score and I was kind of like, Jared Davis had 2 assisted tackles, and considering how much they run the ball and where he plays, I'm surprised that he only had 2 assisted tackles. But it didn't seem like many of the linebackers were tackling last night. So the Colts offensive line did a great job. Fair play to them, but our run defense, the angles were taken to the ball. If the safeties were coming down, the angle that Ashton Davis took on Jonathan Taylor's 78-yard, I don't even know what he's doing, because he's kind of just inviting Taylor just an easy bounce to the outside and 78 yards and he's gone.
I don't know why he tried to get to the hole so fast, but then I think what happened, I think Taylor's speed of how fast he got to that part of the field caught him off guard, and I think he underestimated how fast Jonathan Taylor was, and by the time he kind of put all his kind of momentum into that spot, Jonathan Taylor wasn't there anymore, and then he was past him, and it was kind of hilarious when you watch it. It was hilarious if it wasn't annoying to see him roll down the field for 78 yards, but when you look at the replay, it is kind of comical in how bad the angle and how kind of aggressive it was.
Yeah, it's just one of those. It is funny, but it's not funny at the same time. It's kind of infuriatingly funny.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what the play call is, but there has to be some outside containment there. He knows he's got a little bit of help in the middle. but I think it's the speed. I think you're absolutely right. It's the speed he came down. There's no need to come down. If you come down that fast against someone like Jonathan Taylor, who does have the vision and does have that cutting ability, the chances are you're going to be made to look foolish. And he was 100% made to look foolish. And that put the game to bed. I mean, it was probably over before that point, but how many yards did that? I don't even know how many yards they got. Was it 200 and? Let me have a quick look.
260 yards rushing.
260 yards rushing to go with 272 yards passing. So, I mean, over 500 total yards is pretty damning on the defense, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I think in the context of the game, it was, and we'll get to the whole QB situation, which is its own thing. But I feel like any QB in that situation, once there was a change, especially once there was a change and a kind of a slowdown of momentum with Josh Johnson kind of getting into the game, and it took a while to do that. The defense that was the moment where the defense needs to lock things down to kind of really kind of say, okay, here's a couple of drives we're going to lock down to get you warmed into the game, and so we can kind of keep it in shot. And they didn't. Like, it was, but Josh Johnson put up those 3 points, and it was 28-10 by the half, and it was just like, it was it was the defense completely blew this one for what the offense tried to do, and I think did a lot of success. In spite of what happened with Mike White and the disruption that had. The defense was just kind of, it was just a destruction to any game plan you're going to have going into it if you can't stop them on the first 5 drives. They did stop them on what I found hilarious. They stopped them on the, was it the 1 yard line, on the goal line stand, which is effectively, it's kind of useless because all the offense could do was kind of get a bit of yardage to get a punt out. And then they drove down the field again and got that, and then got that the touchdown to the lineman. So it's kind of like the game was basically done before it even started. With when it came to the defense, just let them have their way, really. So, yeah, Matt. I mean, what was your feelings watching some of those those plays?
The Jets have an issue at the moment in terms of you don't know what you're getting out of your front seven week in, week out. We've seen them take over games and kind of win it for the Jets. The Tennessee one is a great example of that, where 7 sacks and Franklin Myers, Quinnen Williams, Bryce Huff were all on form. And you compare it to what you see last night, where they just looked lethargic and weak. And you've got someone who you've just paid a 4-year, $55 million contract up there. You've got the number 3rd overall pick from 2019 up there. It shouldn't be like that, and for some reason they just, on the short week, could not get out of their blocks. They looked lethargic, looked tired, and slow. I think, and this is perhaps worrying in its own right because we're talking about an undrafted free agent here, but I think they're probably missing someone like Bryce Huff up there. He has that kind of ability to set that edge and that speed, which isn't really replicated in any others. The others are all quite big guys, like big bodies, and don't have that quite same explosive to get outside and get the edge set. So I think that is part of it, but we're talking about top tier players here: Sheldon Rankins, John Franklin Myers, Quinnen Williams. They shouldn't need an undrafted free agent to be able to show up, and that's the question mark for the Jets at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a good point in terms of we're missing, doubly now without having Carl Lawson, there for the season. I think Bryce Huff filled in quite well in terms of giving us that bit of that speed. Now we're missing that. So I think it is, you shouldn't be missing someone like that. But I think he's played above the tag of an undrafted free agent at this point now. I think he's shown that he is an effective NFL player, and we are missing him. So hopefully he gets back for the Buffalo game and we can kind of use his ability. David, Marcus May looks to be out for the season. From the words, we'll obviously get confirmation on that as the days go on. But Salah said his Achilles didn't look good. It looked kind of pretty much he was said as much that he thinks it's done in his press conference. What's the thoughts about Davis being left out? You talked about before we recorded. You talked about maybe he drops back into his favoured position, his potentially favoured position, which is the free safety role.
Yeah, I mean, losing May's a big hit. He hasn't exactly been playing his best football this year, but at the same time, he is certainly the best safety that we've got on the roster by a clear margin. So losing him for the season is going to be quite big for that already inexperienced secondary. Davis has just been really poor. He's been really poor all season when he's been healthy, and he's picked up nagging injuries since we drafted him. So he's not been on the field a massive amount, and that may have stunted his development. But kind of his scouting report, coming into the draft was that he was more a ball hawking center fielder type safety. Which, if you look at his angles when he comes down to play the run, probably makes a lot of sense now because that's not his forte. So, it's going to be interesting to see what the Jets do. We've got Neesman on there in the secondary as well. So will they put him at strong and move Ashton to free?
Would you move Nasruddin into strong safety?
Or I was just about to say you could move someone like Nasruddin into strong safety. I think you have to give Davis a chance to do that free safety role for two reasons.
Yeah.
One, he's having a poor season and he's being played out of position. And two, the chances are that Marcus May is not going to be with the Jets next year. So what you want to do is you want to get some tape of Ashton Davis to see what he looks like in that role, and if he can fulfill that role going forward, or if we are going to need to address the free safety role. And it's similar to the offensive line. It's similar to LDT as well. Do we get some game tape of him in the system? We know that Van Roten. I'm going to bring him up because I love bringing him up. We know Van Roten's not the long-term answer for the Jets at right guard. That's fine. We'll play with it. But is LDT the answer? And we need game film. So this season's gone. This season's gone. We're not going to get in the playoffs. We're not going to do anything this season. So it's about evaluating for next season. And I'd be keen to have Ashton Davis at free safety to see if he can fill that role, and have LDT at right guard at some point. It doesn't have to be against Buffalo, but at some point to get 3-4 games worth of tape on him to see if it's worth bringing him back. Because I don't think Joe Douglas could get away with bringing Van Roten back on a new contract. He's out of contract this year.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll get to the offense in a second. I just want to touch upon that the second tier of the defense and their performance yesterday. It's not like normally we see CJ Mosley struggle, but he really did struggle in this game to shut down the run and Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines.
Yeah, I think it goes back to sometimes you have to give credit to the Colts offensive line, and they dominated up front and they created big lanes. And a player like Mosley, he's so fast to the spot, but when there's 3, 4, 5 spots that are being opened up, you do have to look at what's up front. And we're in a weird situation on defense where for so much of the season a lot of the focus has been around Mike LaFleur and how he's doing as the offensive coordinator, and you do wonder if this is going to start to pivot and we're going to start having discussions around someone like Jeff Ulbrich and his game planning, because we've seen him against Matt Ryan, who's a savvy vet and so quick with the ball, and that game he brought a lot of pressure. We saw against Josh McDaniels, who's a master of keeping defences honest and dropping in quick passes, trick plays, end arounds to keep them ears back. And again, against the Patriots, we kind of brought the pressure in. Yesterday against the Colts, with Carson Wentz, who's known to struggle a bit and kind of not deal as well with the pressure, we saw a lot more soft coverages, a lot more soft looks, and not really getting after the quarterback as much.
Yeah.
And I think it just feels a bit backwards, that approach. And I can understand if you want to kind of try and force Carson Wentz's hand, but to be so passive in defense and kind of take it out of your players' hands and kind of ask them to cover so much ground against a running back like Jonathan Taylor and that Colts offensive line, I think there are questions which can be asked there.
Yeah, it's David. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think we only had one sack on Carson Wentz, and it came late in the game, and I'm pretty sure that was a coverage sack as well, if I remember it rightly. I think he had a fair few seconds to throw. It wasn't like John Franklin Myers beat his player all ends up and came around the edge. I think it was when Wentz stepped up and got taken down. So, we had 0 tackles for loss, and we had 1 sack. And that shows you instantly we got 0 pressure and kind of 0 penetration into the backfield. And it was a strange game plan because Wentz is prone to a few errors if you put him under pressure. But I was talking to a few people this morning about the cornerbacks, because people saying, well, people kept getting open, it's the cornerbacks. And I was kind of, to an extent, yes, it is the cornerbacks. They do have to do a little bit better. I think Brandon Eccles had a a poor game for him last night.
Mm.
But also, if you can't stop the run, if they're getting 7 yards before they have contact, and you can't put any pressure on the quarterback, that makes the cornerback's jobs so incredibly difficult. Because Wentz had time to sit back there. He had time. The players had time to sit down in the zone coverage because we were playing a lot of zone. It was a strange game plan. So I do agree with Matt. I was thinking of Michael LaFleur there. I do agree with Matt that it was just a strange concept. I would have liked to see a bit more man coverage and a little bit more pressure being brought on Carson, but maybe the point was that we couldn't stop the run, so they felt like they needed to be a little bit more conservative in terms of keeping linebackers back. It's not good. It's the linebackers are an issue for us at the minute. Jonathan Taylor was stiff arming CJ Mosley all over the field. He had a couple of missed tackles. I haven't looked at the stats yet, but I imagine Mosley's going to be down for 2, 3, 4 missed tackles.
Yeah.
So he's not going to have a good outcome for this game. I mean, we need help. We need help. I think Fadakazi hasn't been as good as he has been recently either. He was supposed to be this dominant run stuffing defensive tackle, nose tackle. Haven't seen it. Haven't seen much of him recently, and a lot of the long runs are coming straight up the middle as well. So, if we're not getting what we thought we were getting from our strongest point on the defense, it's hardly surprising that our weaker sides are struggling.
Yeah.
And Jared Davis wasn't great last night. The other linebackers who came in weren't great. Safeties weren't great. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard. I don't blame the cornerbacks as much as I blame the defensive line and the linebackers for what happened last night.
Yeah, I definitely think it's the front seven needs to control the game as well, and even the front four needs to do a better job of controlling the game. And I think that's where it comes down to missing our friend from the summer. I think that's just a massive loss that they based a lot of the defense and the decisions they made upon getting him in the building in March. I think they took that to the draft and they made those choices maybe on filling out the rest of the team with the assumption that you had someone who's going to just destroy plays, very early on, and get to the quarterback very quickly in Carl Lawson. So I think it does matter. And as Matt, you said earlier, Bryce Huff was filling in that role to an extent and doing a good job of doing that, and he's now gone. So I think that might help because it's very much, if you look at Salah's defense and the defense in San Fran that he had there, that's how they won. Sorry,
Andrew, it was just from what you were saying earlier about. So these grades from PFF have just come out,
okay.
And you know how much PFF hates CJ Mosley when he's playing well.
Go on then, on the live one, gone.
His grade is 26.8, the worst defender on the Jets,
of course,
by quite a margin.
They were popping champagne last night. They were,
and they had 3 missed tackles on CJ, which was 50% of all missed tackles on the Jets.
Right.
So yeah, CJ did not come out of that very well.
No.
Let's put that. But Ashton Davis came out with an 81.5. So
what?
There you
Pardon?
go. There you go.
They closed their eyes on that 78-yard one. They were popping champagne about how bad CJ was doing.
Ashton Davis got an 81.5.
It's a joke.
So they've got him at an 87.4 coverage grade, even though he was targeted 3 times and gave up 3 receptions.
Outrageous.
So, I don't get it. I honestly don't. It's becoming more. It's hard to, how do we keep on referencing this establishment when it's so inconsistent, even negatively or positively when it's deciding the players. Like we see every single play. We see the film. We see even. And you see the stats even sometimes don't even match up with what you would think the grade would be. So I just don't know at this point.
It's why you should never base it off PFF because we've seen plenty of games this season and you watch the games and Conor McGovern and Greg Van Roten are consistently outmatched and consistently getting beaten.
Yeah.
But PFF, we're kind of taking a tangent here, aren't we, into a slightly PFF slagging off section. But
well, yeah,
we're going into the mini buy. I think it's a really important point by Matt is you should never use not just PFF but stat sheets from anyone to make a firm judgment because it only tells part of the story. That but PFF is probably more mind-boggling than any other stat
I
that's
think it's
out there.
the mind share that they have, and also if there was just some sort of like side operation that kind of gets used in once in a while, you'd be like, okay, but it's so dominant in terms of its how much it's shared, their stats and their gradings get shared, and it's so so that's why I think it's just the clout that they apparently have. I feel is
Well,
kind of
apparently teams use them, don't they? So teams
yeah,
actually.
get
So
out of here,
that's what you want to.
Anyway, back to the
Yeah.
back to the defense. Yeah, I think the point about looking at the defense overall. I think it's you're looking at uh, two games. The last three games we've had two games over 500 yards. Before that, we had over 400 yards in total yards. So it is the type of defense that if you don't, it's kind of you've got to make plays. You've got to make plays that are you're going to allow the yards up, right? You're going to allow the yards to go up because, like as we said before, it's a bend don't break defense, and with that, you need playmakers who are going to make individual plays to ruin plays. Whether that's a pass rusher deflecting a pass that gets intercepted by the linebacker, or something like of those natures. That those are the things that you need to happen because you're allowing them to get you put the yardage up. But it is frustrating to see a defense struggling so much, but the offense actually putting up points. And how often have we said over the last 10 years, oh, if only we were lost games by scoring points, but getting outscored. Well, it doesn't. I don't want to say it feels much better. I would say maybe a little bit better because at least you show life on one side of the ball. No, I think it's enough of that can be said about the defense now. I think they've got a lot of work to do to see how they can address the big issues, which is run D, and hopefully they kind of get things sorted out for the second half of the season. Onto the offense now. A lot more positive. David, your new man crush, Mike White. It started off well. Obviously, had to come out with the kind of the hand injury, the numbness that he had. And Josh Johnson, I thought, came in for three touchdowns, over 300 yards, did a great job as well. So, what's your thoughts overall about the offense?
Yeah, it's definitely the positive side of the play. I think Mike White did come in and he did a really good job. Again, another first quarter touchdown. Played really well, made some really good reads. Was finding Elijah Moore. They obviously got a little bit of a chemistry kind of starting. I posted a tweet today just because the touchdown looked like a really simple one. When I first watched it, it looked like a broken coverage, looked really simple, easy reads, done. When I watched it back, you kind of saw his progressions. And I think Elijah Moore was either his third or his fourth progression because he looked right to Denzel Mims first. Then he was over the middle to the tight end. And Michael Carter was there as well coming out of the backfield. And then Elijah Moore was the fourth way on the left-hand side. So he moves all the way from right to left, which is a really positive sign for any quarterback that he can make a full field read. And he's stuck in there with pass pressure as well. So, Johnson came in and did really, really well. And I think you have to give Josh Johnson props because he's coming cold. He hasn't had much experience, much play time. And I think he did relatively well in the second half. A lot of his success came when the Colts were up big and they went into their shell cover 2, cover 3 defense. So there's a lot on offer for him. I think the problem we had is when he came in, it was when the game was still on the line. So we just scored a touchdown. We were still in the game. We couldn't get anything going apart from a field goal for the rest of the end of the first quarter, second quarter, and that's where the game got away from us.
And again, it's to be expected sometimes when the backup comes in. Normally, because you expected the drop in quality. I don't necessarily think there's a huge drop in quality. I think obviously Mike White is a better player, but Josh Johnson's got the experience still. So I think that's not the big issue. But it's just someone getting into the game. You needed a little bit of time for the defense just to hold steady and just like give them a bit of time just to get into the game and get back to speed. And they eventually did it, but it was too late by then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was absolutely too late, and I think you're right. That's when we really needed them to come up and make a stop and just keep it close while he kind of when he kind of so he could get warmed up a little bit. Just keep it close enough that we could strike. And it's 28-10 at the half. It's basically gone at that point because they got the ball to start the third quarter as well. But I think we can't talk about the offense without talking about Elijah Moore. I thought Elijah Moore was fantastic again, and a couple of touchdowns for him. What I like and what I mentioned in today's newsletter was we're using Elijah Moore a lot over the middle, and that's where he's going to do most of his damage. He doesn't need to be in the slot, saying he works in the middle of the field doesn't mean to say he has to work from the slot. But when we were doing it early season with Zach and Elijah, we were always looking at Elijah as that big play, and the big play was 50 yards through the air. They're really low percentage. As good as Zach Wilson is, and he is a fantastic deep ball thrower, those are still low completion percentage throws. What we're doing now, which is bringing Elijah more over the field in these slants and these crossing kind of routes, and it gets him the ball in his hands. It lets his route running come to fruition because the defender hasn't got the sideline to protect him. Elijah Moore can go either way, and that's what we're seeing. And I think Elijah Moore's in for a very, very big second half of the season. I think we're working out how to use him to the best of his ability. So that was a really positive. It's a shame to lose Tyler Croft because he made a couple of good plays as well. He went out of I think it was a chest injury. Was it a chest injury again?
Yeah, it was.
And that was same as earlier as well. So that's a little bit concerning.
Yeah, this is a big issue, isn't it?
It's staying on the
injury.
field. Yeah. And I mean, Griffin got a touchdown, so apparently the world is flat because Griffin got a touchdown, which was, the more we slag him off, the more he'll come and perform. So let's carry that on.
He also caught the referee's flag as well. Did you catch that?
Yeah. He also dropped the ball though, didn't he, on third down before Jonathan Taylor's run? I didn't see him catch the referee's flag, but that's quite impressive.
Yeah, he caught the referee's flag and he caught it. And people wanted to make a joke about it, but he had just I think just had the touchdown catch already. So it was kind of the joke wasn't unfortunately there for them. But no, I think the offense really impressed me. Matt, what's your feelings about the offense?
I think it's a big debate at the moment, isn't it? Whether the playbook, play calling, game planning between those kind of first weeks with Zach and the kind of more recent weeks with Mike White and Josh Johnson. I think for me, one of the big differences, and David touched on this, but I just wanted to call it out, is the personnel usage looks so much more impressive than those opening weeks where we were kind of rigidly stuck in formations and rigidly stuck with trying to use Elijah Moore as the deep threat, trying to use Corey Davis as this intermediate big body, trying to force the tight ends through the middle of the field and kind of very stuck in what looked quite pedestrianised offense. I think the big reflection, and kind of you can go on, and the scheme is the same and the play calling is good, but it's how they're using their weapons. And this is something we spoke about at length in the off season, is how would LaFleur use his pieces like chess pieces, use the weapons he had available and kind of create those matchups to create favourable opportunities and passing lanes. And I think that's one of the big things that's improved for us, and something which we can hopefully keep going. I think you like seeing the tight ends kind of mix up their routes, so they're kind of mixing in corner routes, deep routes, post routes. You've got Elijah Moore kind of working that middle of the field. You've got Michael Carter breaking inwards, breaking outwards, kind of keeping those linebackers honest. And just being smart with your play callers. Someone like Denzel Mims with his big body kind of keeping him in that intermediate game. And hopefully I think Corey Davis will kind of slip back into that role, but moving him around the lineup, getting him in the slot, getting him outside. So it's looking good. The offense is kind of trending upwards at the moment. I think it's still going through its natural struggles, and that will continue over the season. I think one thing that's kind of been lost in the last 2 weeks is the way that the Bengals and the Colts have attacked the Jets has kind of been a nice matchup for them almost. You're talking about kind of two soft zone defenses where there are those throwing lanes, throwing angles for the quarterback to kind of hit Elijah Moore underneath. There's not too much pressure on a running back breaking out of the field, and there is opportunity for yards after the catch, which I think has kind of gone Gunn's plan. I think they've got a big matchup coming up in 9 days now against the Buffalo Bills at home, where you're kind of facing a defense which is a bit more aggressive and will look to kind of get after you a bit more. We'll probably see a lot more man played against the Jets and kind of linebackers rushing, a lot more pressure on the quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can keep up this momentum, if we can kind of keep them on the back foot, because I think they're number one ranked defense in the league at the moment, and rightly so. They've got great players at every single level of that defense. So positive signs, encouraging offense, and obviously I'm sure we're going to kind of dive into the specifics and the main storyline around the Jets, but overall the offense as a whole is trending upwards.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the first time in franchise history they've had over 30 points and over 480 yards. back to back weeks. So uh, really impressive offensive output from them, really getting it done. You see that the playmakers that we really excited about are coming into the spotlight now and doing well. So that's really, really good to see. So we'll wrap up today's show on the debate, on the chat about the QB situation, David, that we talked about off air before. You know, as we roll into next week, and we'll preview the game with more information as we get closer to it in next week's preview show. But they say that Zach is a good shot to maybe practice next week. And so we had this kind of quick chat debate about what we do. What would you do in terms of the QB situation, going from the information that we have from everyone who's played and everyone who's injured and not injured? What's your thoughts about it?
So I generally think that the Jets really only have one choice, and I think they've lucked into a little bit of a good situation in terms of Mike White's been playing well. He's been playing very well. I mean, he's up near 80% completion, 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 rather unfortunate interceptions. They're coming up against a Buffalo Bills team, as Matt said, is one of the best defensive teams in the NFL. So what you don't want to do in this situation is bring Zach back, who may not be 100%. And even if he is 100%, I still wouldn't bring him back because not a lot of good can come from that situation. You're sitting a quarterback that is performing and executing the offense, and we can debate all day about is Mike White is he actually a good quarterback, or is it scheme specific? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. If he's executing and putting points on the board, it doesn't matter if it's a scheme. It doesn't matter, what we're doing. He's still putting points on the board. He's still moving the football. That's the only thing that matters. If he struggles against Buffalo, then you've got the perfect excuse to bring Zach back against a softer run of games.
Yeah.
You've got Houston. You've got the Miami Dolphins. You've got an opportunity there to bring him back into a good situation. Putting him against Buffalo on the back of the offense moving, like you just said, scoring 30 plus points, 400 plus yards in back-to-back weeks, the expectation on Zach would be unfairly high and the critique would be unfairly harsh if he was to struggle again.
Yeah.
And I think that you're putting him in a worse situation, putting him in a game against Buffalo with that defense, than you are having him another. And if they need to lie, then lie about it. Say, do you know what?
He's not ready.
He should be good to go, but he's just not ready yet. There's a little bit of tenderness. There's a little bit of something.
We're
going to give him
one
more
on the
week.
side of caution, right?
Exactly. You're not going to get any friends for being the most honest franchise in the NFL.
No.
If you need to protect your quarterback and you need to protect your rookie, then I have no problem with Salah coming out saying he's just not ready. It's just not right yet. But I think not starting Mike White would be a mistake. I think it sends the wrong message. Obviously, if he's healthy, he went out injured last night as well, so it depends on if he can practice this week. Salah seemed pretty confident that he would be able to practice, so I think Mike White will be fine.
He said his hand, by the end of the fourth quarter, it was feeling okay, but by then,
no point putting it back in.
No point back in. No, so he should be good to go. And I think you've convinced me. As leading into this recording, I had the idea of saying if he's 100% ready, like not if there's any concerns, obviously hold him out as long as he's ready to go. But if he is ready to go, I felt like if this offense is doing better with LaFleur in the box, and we feel it is, I think that's a tangible difference to what we've seen with him going upstairs. If Zach in that offense, the potential could be one that we could actually keep up. Potentially, like we could actually make it a game against a very difficult opponent. It's the boom option against a team where you're going to have to go boom to try and beat them, to overturn the talent deficiency that we have between the two teams. So, because we're not just talking about the best defense in the league, we're talking about the best offense in the league as well with the Bills, right? With that explosive offense with Josh Allen. So, I don't know, but I think you're right. It's the best approach. Matt, what's your feelings about it? I think David's idea of like keeping Zach out of the line is one idea. I guess one thing I'll throw to you is do you make Zach active and a backup in case we do want to go for it, if we feel that we need to kind of up the potential to go for it, or would you kind of keep him out and just keep the storyline nice and easy?
I think the next 7 days are kind of, you have to see where he gets with his injury. I think I totally agree with David. You kind of ride the hot hand. The bigger picture story, and this is the good news, is Zach Wilson will start again this season at some point or another. I think we're all fairly confident that we'll see him back there. It's more just a case of when. And all of these things that we've seen over the last 2 weeks when this offense has run smoothly, that's all within Zach's grasp. We haven't seen anything where you said to yourself, oh, Zach can't do that. Zach doesn't have the ability to do that. So when we do see Zach again, it's going to be, we hope to his benefit, that he's missed out these couple of weeks and has had that opportunity to kind of watch, to learn, to develop, to grow, and understand what's kind of required for this offense to function. And he's very capable of that. That kind of will he, won't he? That begins and ends with Zach Wilson, and everything we know about his work ethic, his commitment to the sport, his like love for the game gives me faith that he'll be able to take it when we see him get some learnings. I think we all kind of expected to kind of go through those rookie struggles, that rookie teething experience with Zach, particularly coming from BYU, which one of the big storylines before the draft was kind of that level of competition discussion. And I don't think it should really be too much of a surprise that Mike White, Josh Johnson, who are 5th and 13-year vets respectively, have kind of been able to kind of get up to speed. I think White admitted himself that even though he hasn't been playing, it's still been a massive benefit to him to kind of be around NFL defenses for that amount of time. So when he did get his opportunity, he was kind of there. So it's all preparation and speed for Zach Wilson this year. And that's kind of what we've got to wait for. In terms of the Bills game, I would leave him inactive.
Yeah.
Kind of get through that game. See where you are after that. And then you've got an opportunity with what feels like a friendlier run of games.
Absolutely.
I think 4 of the next 5 games are at home.
Yeah,
You've only got to travel to Houston.
And weaker opponents.
Weaker opponents. You've only got to travel to Houston. Yeah. Then you've got Bills, but then after that you've got Miami at home, you've got the Saints at home.
Yeah.
And Philadelphia at home, I believe.
It's Philly, yeah. So it's an easier run of games. Yeah, I think you're right, yeah.
It's opening up. I just think the question is on everyone's lips is will Zach kind of show these steps and these signs of progress that we're all hoping for when he comes back?
No, absolutely. I think that's to be seen. I think we'll know more as the week goes on in terms of the practice reports and the health and the injury reports. So that's to be seen. And
one of the ways as well for the Buffalo, what you want to do is you want to keep their offense off the field. Yeah. So what you don't want is these short drives that we were seeing earlier in the season. So whereas Mike White might be a bit of more of a boring quarterback, if he can sustain longer drives and keep the Buffalo offense off the field for longer, it gives you at least a chance. Because I don't think we're going to beat Buffalo. Of course, we're not going to be. I think it could get ugly, but at the same time, I think there's a way to keeping it in check. And if we don't get embarrassed, I'll be pretty happy. But I've got a quick question for both of you. You love a bit of Mike White, don't you? I love a bit of Mike White. This has just been revealed that the Bryans are going to indeed cut OBJ.
Yes, I saw that. So I saw that.
Would you take it, considering where we are in the waiver wire? We're pretty high. I imagine Jacksonville might snap him up.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either. But Matt, would you take OBJ?
I think I would avoid Odell Beckham Jr.
I just don't feel like we're deficient in the.
I don't think it's the right fit. We're not in the right zone.
And our wide receiver unit is good. Of course, he's a talented player, but he also brings a lot of baggage. And I feel that, it's not a weak point where we're desperately needed. I mean, where it would be a perfect fit for him is going back to Louisiana and going back to New Orleans. I think that would be a perfect fit with the Michael Thomas news for
Baltimore might be quite a nice fit.
I'll tell you where I'd like to see him.
Where?
I'd like to see him go to Tennessee.
Okay.
And I know you're thinking they've got Julio and AJ Brown already, but you can't replace Derrick Henry with a running back. There's no running back who can.
That's interesting.
You can do what Derrick Henry can do. You need to replace him with depth across the field. So, I'd like to see.
Tannehill would be pretty lucky to have OBJ, Julio Jones, and AJ Brown, wouldn't he?
I mean,
that's how you replace Derrick Henry.
That'd be interesting. I mean, this this obviously will come out. We'll see. We'll see when you guys listen to this whether that's actually been if he's gone through the waivers and who's claimed him, if anyone's claimed him, if he's signed with anyone, that will be played out. But yeah, he is an enigma and an interesting player in the league. But
I'd love
yeah,
to see him end up in Jacksonville. That'd be brilliant.
is it just like to see him just kind of go into
I think he'd be
obscurity?
devastated. I think he'd be really annoyed about it.
Yeah, I think so too. He's just getting claimed. He's got no choice. He's got to go there after trying to push his way out of Cleveland. He ends up in Jacksonville. In that
I mean, it might
mess,
be bad for Trevor Lawrence's development to have someone like OBJ, but it'd be
Yeah, I
funny
don't
for
know.
OBJ purposes.
Yeah, I think so, but that's still to be seen. But I think, starting on defense, finishing on offense was the right way. I feel a lot better about things. Still annoying question marks. You wish it was simple and it was our main QB doing these things, but it's not. It's there's a bunch of other guys doing it. But look, the talent is showing on the offense. Michael Carter showing up, Elijah Moore showing up, and I think that's really good to see. AVT's generally playing pretty well, some good plays, even though he may not have had the strongest game yesterday. So overall, positivity going into the mini bye. Obviously, we get another Sunday where we can kind of enjoy other football, which is pretty nice because you kind of just get to enjoy the game without the reaction of a bad loss, So I think that's pretty good. So David, Matt, thanks for joining me on this one.
Always a pleasure, mate. Enjoy a Sunday free of the Jets. And sit down in front of Red Zone, crack open a nice bottle of red wine. Just enjoy it.
Sounds really good. So enjoy the weekend, enjoy the NFL action, and we'll catch you next week for our Bills preview. See you guys.